What's going on? It's your boy O Scruggs back at it again, OS Sports Podcast. Before we get started, let me just give you a little heads up. If you keep seeing me looking up, it's a big ass spider on the ceiling. And anybody that knows me will tell you there's nothing I'm more afraid of in this world than spiders. And I would get it, but it's on the ceiling, so I can't reach it. And I don't have my little spider gun. So if you see me looking up, that's because I'm paranoid this thing above my head. Anyway, let's get into it. So for those that don't know, I was an intern for the Philadelphia 76ers in the 2002 going into the 2003 season. And I worked with statistics with a guy named Harvey Pollock. Now, I'm guessing most people don't know who Harvey Pollock is. But if you Google him, you'll see that he's very instrumental in the NBA. Harvey Pollock was the head statistician of the Philadelphia 76ers. But here's the crazy thing. He's been with the NBA since day one, since the first day of the NBA. He actually started with the Philadelphia Warriors and then transitioned into the Philadelphia 76ers. And what Harvey is most famously known for, actually I shouldn't even say he's famously known for, because I'm not sure how many people know he did this. But we all know about the Wilt Chamberlain game where Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points. There's that famous picture of Wilt Chamberlain holding up the sign that says 100. Now, the reason Wilt Chamberlain holding up that sign, give you a little backstory. That game wasn't played in Philadelphia. That game was actually played in Hershey Arena, which is in Hershey, Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Pennsylvania or Hershey, it's what it sounds like. It's Hershey, where Hershey chocolate comes from, but that's also a city in Pennsylvania, small town. So they played the game out there. There was no cameras. It wasn't on TV. There wasn't even really any press for the game. But Harvey Pollock was there, and he did the statistics for that game. So the reason why Wilt Chamberlain is holding up that 100 sign is because since there was no press there. Oh, hold on 1 second. The spider is moving. Hold on. This is live, so. All right, he chilling. I ain't gonna fuck with him. Such a punk. But the reason why Wilt Chamberlain is holding up that sign is because there was no press there. There was no cameras. It wasn't on TV. So after the game, Harvey came over to Wilt. He said, well, we need, you just scored 100 points. This has never happened before. We need something, some type of memorabilia, some type of photo from this game. And this is, this is the 60s. So this is before, a lot of people were just walking around with handheld cameras. There was no cell phones, obviously. So Harvey went over to Wilt Chamberlain and he told Wilt Chamberlain, here, I want you to hold up this sign. So he took out a marker, took out a piece of paper, wrote 100 on a piece of paper, gave it to Wilt, told Wilt to hold up the sign, and he took the picture. So when you see that famous picture of Wilt Chamberlain holding up that 100, it's Harvey Pollock. So a little backstory. So I applied for this internship. I show up. I didn't know who Harvey Pollock was, and I'm a diehard Sixers fan, but I had no idea who he was. And I got there, and he was an old guy at the time. I believe he died in 2015 and 93, so he was about 81, around 80, when I was working with him. And he was the nicest guy. I believe Harvey is Jewish. Don't quote me on that, but I think he was Jewish. And he was the nicest, one of the nicest people I've ever met. And I remember feeling real bad for him because talking to him with this, during my interview, he was telling me that he had just came back to work because his wife had passed away not too long ago. And anyway, he hired me on the spot. It was like, well, I should say hired because I didn't get paid. But, he's like, all right, the job is yours. He explained what it was. I took the job, started working with him. Now, basically, we did a few things as the interns, but the main thing we did, Harvey has a book, and I can't find the book. I actually have the book from the previous year because all the interns, that was one of the things we got. We got a book from the previous year, Harvey Pollock's NBA statistical yearbook. And I wish that book, I'm not sure where it's at. It's probably somewhere at my mom's house, stashed away somewhere. But so basically, the main thing we did was, this was in the basement of the Philadelphia Spectrum, which no longer exists. The Spectrum is where the Sixers played I believe the late 60s, they started playing there after they left the Philadelphia Convention Center until 1990, the end of the 95-96 season, before they built what's called now the Wachovia Center. Anyway, the Sixers was already playing in the Wachovia Center. And if you know Philly, we got a sports complex where, the Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, and Phillies, they all play in this complex in South Philly. And they're all like, only separated by parking lots. So that was the first cool thing about it, because I remember going to the Spectrum as a little kid, with my dad. So it was cool because I had never been in the basement. I shouldn't call it the basement. It's the basement of the Spectrum, but it's also where all the offices were. So that was the first thing that struck me. I was like, wow, I'm gonna get to work in the Spectrum, and it was so cool because when you walk through this hallway, and if you know the Spectrum, and you can Google it if you don't know what it looked like, it was round. Like most of them old arenas were just basically a round circle. So I remember you used to walk around the hallway, but as you walk around the hallway, it will also lead, it was certain doors you could go through. Like one door would lead you to the Spectrum floor. And at that time, I believe the Philadelphia Wings, which is indoor lacrosse, they were playing. So that's how the stadium, the inside was set up. But you could walk through these hallways and you basically just see like how the players would come through the locker rooms and how they would go out into the floor. So that was cool to get to see that firsthand and just walk around that building and see all the pictures up and just know all the legendary players that played in that building for the Sixers and for the visiting team. But the main thing we would do, if you follow basketball, you hear it a lot now, the plus minus. They'll say Joel Embiid is a plus 28 in this game. Steph Curry is a -5 in this game. Kevin Durant is a +5 in this game. So that's basically telling you when that player is on the floor, the differential in points during the game for those specific minutes that player is in, not for the entire game, just for the time that player specifically played. So basically we sat there and we did these statistical sheets where, and this is 14 years ago or whatever, so my memory is a little foggy on exactly how it was, but basically we would sit there and we would get these sheets and you would go through literally every single play of the game. It would not we wasn't watching this on a video. We had if they had statistical sheets, and I'm not even sure if they still even print out statistical sheets for games now, because everything's on computers and on the phone. But back then, early 2000s, all this stuff wasn't on cell phones yet, and people had laptops, but it wasn't quite maybe like it is now, and people don't really even have laptops now. I guess more people got the iPads or whatever. So we would go through these stat sheets, literally every single play of the stat sheet, and you would have to, I forget the system that we used, but it was a system that you could use. All right, this team scored this point, this team scored this point, back and forth. And then it would tell you this player was in it, these 5 players was in the game. And then it would tell you what time this player subbed out and what time this player subbed in, what time that player subbed out and this player subbed in. And that's basically how you got the format to figure out how many points were scored for and against that team, which when each single player was in there. And it was tedious. Like it took a while to do these forms. If I sat in there for, on average, let's say about 3 hours, 4 hours a day for my internship, maybe you would get 1.5 sheets done, maybe 2 if you was lucky. And I remember he would go back, and you could tell he had been doing this for so long. I mean, he invented it, but you could tell he'd been doing it for so long, because he would take the sheet, and little did we know, he already did a whole bunch. It's hard to explain, but he basically had another sheet, a system that he would look at. So when he got your sheet, he can go through it and figure out if you did it right. And if you got one completely right, he would take all the interns out to this Italian restaurant in South Philly. And I wish I knew the name of that Italian restaurant. And it wasn't a chain restaurant. It was like a mom and pop spot. But still to this day, I'm gonna say it's the best Italian food I ever had. A small restaurant, but if any of the interns got one right, whoever was there that day, we would go out after that day, and we would go to the restaurant. Now, I know y'all thinking like, well, y'all must have been going there all the time. That's wrong, because it was so seldom that somebody would get a whole sheet right, because going through a whole NBA game with so many points being scored, so many substitutions, it was real difficult to get a whole one right. But when you did, or somebody else did, man, you was happy you was there that day because that food used to be banging. I used to get the what was it, the mussels and the red sauce with the linguine, the garlic bread. Oh, bon appetit. And a few other things. I remember it was so funny because when he told me his birthday was, I was like, oh, we both Pisces. My birthday is March 19th, and his birthday is March 9th. But I remember it was funny because when the first time he told me his birthday was March 9th, I was like, oh, that's the same day Biggie died. And he was like, who? Yeah, I am telling this 80-year-old white man about his birthday is the same day Biggie died. Like he was going to know who Biggie Smalls was. But I remember that being funny to me. And we did the internship was cool. We did a lot of cool things. This is also back when they did all-star voting. It literally was a sheet. So when you would go to the game, every fan that came in would have a sheet, and they would check off or fill. It was a circle. You would fill in a circle. Like the SAT test. You would basically fill in a circle of which players you thought should be the all-star. And I remember we used to stand literally at the front of the arena where everybody would come in, and that was one of our jobs. You hand out a sheet to everybody coming in and say, vote for the all-star, vote for the all-star. And that was cool. It was also cool because the Sixers dance team used to be out there a lot of times with us, greet fans. They come in, tell them to vote for the all-star, doing other events. So it was cool that, I got to spend a lot of time hanging around the Sixers dance team. Any man can't hate that. So that was cool. And I remember one time, I'll give you a couple stories real quick. I remember one time he had, I believe it was some bobblehead dolls and some posters that he needed Allen Iverson to sign. So he had now this is over at Wachovia. Remember, our office is in the Spectrum, but when we did games, we would walk across the parking lot and go to Wachovia. It wasn't called Wachovia. It was like Core State Center or something. But we walk over there for the games when we had to, do the All-Star voting things, or if they had us doing other things. And also, we was able to go to the games for free. If you was working that day, the internship, the day of a game, you get there early, do your internship. And, he, to the day he died, he was still doing statistics, and he had his two sons. So if you're a Sixers fan, if you watch the games, if you see and you could Google what he looked like, 9 times out of 10, if you've seen him, you probably didn't pay him no mind, but he was sitting in that row on the side where the press and the announcers and everybody at, with his two sons. And but anyway, I remember one time he had some posters and bobblehead dolls that he needed to get signed for some charity, and he was gonna get them signed by Iverson. And I remember I was one of the interns that had to walk with him, like to carry some of the stuff. And I walked all the way into the Sixers locker room. I don't want to say I met Iverson. He was there, of course, but what's the expression? Act like you've been there before, play it cool. Iverson is my favorite athlete of all time. But, I didn't fan out. I stood there, held the stuff, gave it to Harvey for him to get an Iverson to sign or whatever. Harvey talked to a few other people in there, and then we left. But I remember on the inside, I'm 22 at the time. I'm like, yo, and this Iverson in his prime. I'm going crazy. And on the inside, I'm like, yo, that's Iverson. Like, what the hell? But after the games we did were, a lot of times you see a lot of players in the hallways. And I met a lot of players doing that. I remember, having a conversation. If you're a little bit young, you might not know some of these players. Busting it up with Bo Outlaw, Charles Oakley. This is when Charles Oakley was with the Warriors. And I also remember this is when Michael Jordan was with the Warriors. So I never forget one of the preseason games, just chilling out in the lobby, talking to Charles Oakley. Michael Jordan comes over. Now, Michael Jordan didn't come to Charles Oakley. He just walked right by us. He had his headphones on. It looked like Beats for Dre, but it's way before Beats for Dre. And I just remember damn, yo, that's Michael Jordan. All these players around. And, these dudes mad tall, and I'm not tall. And so everybody just towering over, the regular folks. But it was cool just to be that up close to a lot of, players that, I was a fan of. I'm gonna do another show, I think, where another video where I go more into detail about some of those stories. But the last quick story I'll give you was also the Wizards. I can't remember if this was the preseason or this was once the regular season started. But I remember I feel like it was the preseason. But I remember one time me and my homie that was an intern there, we was like, because we used to get these passes that you put around your neck, basically like a press pass. So we pretty much could go anywhere in the building as long as we had those passes on. And I remember one time, me and my friend, we was like, yo, we got these passes. We should take advantage of this. This preseason security wasn't quite as tight in the preseason. So I remember we start walking up the hallway towards the locker room. So we was like, yo, let's go back by the locker rooms or whatever. So we start walking up towards the locker room. And I remember we getting deeper and deeper, like closer, like farther into the locker rooms. And I remember we started getting nervous, like, yo, you sure we should keep going? So we was like, yo, do it, we do it. And I never forget, we got to where the press was outside. I guess it was outside the Wizards locker room. And this is when Doug Collins was the coach of the Wizards. And I never forget, all the press was around Doug Collins with the cameras and they interviewing him. And you just, I wish we had footage of this. You just see us in the background, like just walk by Doug Collins. And I think that was at the point we was like, yo, we probably went too far, man. Let's bang a U-turn and be out. Because we was like, we didn't want to lose our internship. We wouldn't have got arrested, but we could have lost the internship. And we might have got Harvey in trouble. But we was wild back then. We used to run all through that arena, man, doing stuff. A lot of the games we got to sit all the way down, like not on the floor where the fans are, but like there's a press section. It's right off the floor. So, it was games I got to go to where I was maybe 2-3 rows off the floor, especially in those preseason games. During the regular season, it was a little bit harder because it was more people. It was more people there. But basically, we could sit wherever we want, as long as there wasn't nobody in those seats. And if somebody came, you would just get up and move. So those are some of the good stories. And the last story I'll leave, I grew up with a guy who used to play for the Sixers named John Salmons. Like we went to school together, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and he lived around my way. And I remember it was crazy because he was only a little bit taller than me, and he always played basketball, and he was good, but he wasn't like great. It wasn't like, we was 12, 13, it wasn't like somebody I was like, oh, you're going to be in the NBA one day. And I'll never forget, I had went away to military school in 8th grade, so maybe about 2 years went by that I didn't see him. And I seen John at the playground because he lived on one side of the playground, I lived on the other side of the playground. And I remember seeing him for the first time in 2 years, and he had went from maybe being 5'7" to probably being about 6'3" at this time. And it was crazy because then years later, he wound up getting drafted by the Sixers the same year I was an intern for the Sixers. And I remember I never spoke to him, and I don't know if he ever saw me because I never was like that close to him. But I remember kind of being embarrassed, like, damn, we both from the same neighborhood. We kind of grew up together for a while. Yeah, I'm an intern for the Sixers, and that's dope, that's cool. But he's playing for the Sixers. Like, he's a first-round draft pick, millionaire now, playing for the Sixers, somebody I grew up with. And for some reason, I remember just kind of being embarrassed by, like, damn, he in the NBA, and I'm just some intern that ain't, some short intern, and this dude is 6-7 millionaire now. But that's just some of the stories. So when you hear that plus minus, that's Harvey Pollock. He had a bunch of other statistics in there, like a lot of hustle statistics that were in the book. I'm gonna try to find that book next time I go back to Philly, go to my mom's house, and I'll show you the cover of it. And the following year, I'm actually in the book. I didn't get a copy of that book, but all the interns that worked on that book. So for the year I was there, that book doesn't come out till before the beginning of the next season. So my name is actually in that book, and I might try to find that on Amazon, but that might be kind of hard to find. But sometimes when you're young, you don't think about the future and certain things you should hold on to. But I wish I'd have went back and got that book, but hopefully I could find the book from the previous year before I was the intern. And so like I said, look him up, Harvey Pollock. He's from Philly, from the NBA since day one, working with the press and statistics. Legend, passed away in 2015. So salute Harvey Pollock. That's my guy. And we'll have some more stories from me when I was an intern. I got some other stories we're going to get into. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share. It's your boy, Old Scruggs. Peace.